Hello and welcome to Bookworms. It's the show where we read books, talk about books. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Joe.
How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing fantastic, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a while since I've read the book that we're going to talk about today, and I think that's for the best.
Yeah, you were pretty hot to trot on this book while we were reading it, and I was very confused.
Oh, I guess I bought into the hype machine because this book was super hyped to me. Looking it up online when I was researching book choices, I wanted to do one that I hadn't read before. This one is highly rated. So reading it, I'm just like, I don't
What you
see where it's
fell
coming
for,
from.
Alex, is the problem of reading a modern fantasy novel is just that it doesn't matter how good they say they're all crap.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
At least the traditionally published ones. I mean, I read recently a really good independently published one, Between Two Fires. I have a really good book review on Goodreads, Medium, or Substack, whichever one you want to go to on that. You should go check it out. Links will be in the description or on our. Did I tell you, Alex? We have a tree link on our Instagram now.
Oh no, you hadn't said that.
Yeah. So I got all the major places you'd want to find us on our tree link, and yeah, you can find us on Goodreads there. You can find my book reviews on those other sites I mentioned. You can find our podcast on different listening apps.
Yeah, I was thinking about getting doing the was it Medium account because I've been spite reading as many of the Hugo Award-winning books from 2023 as I could because we read Some Desperate Glory, or 2024 as I could because we read Some Desperate Glory, and I want to prove to myself that every other book was better than that book. So far I've read two, and I am still correct.
Yeah. I've been listening to you, and yeah, it's been quite interesting to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah. Yeah, the Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi should have won. That one's so good.
Is it?
Oh yeah, it's great. It was a great book.
Yeah. Did you listen to it, or you get a physical copy?
I listened to it.
Okay.
I did a little bit of reading, like with the book when I had the chance, because I had a copy of it from the library. But yeah, it was mostly audiobook. Working with the dogs, I can just throw an audiobook around while I take care of them and do that.
You read the physical copy of this book, though, didn't you? So
I
so
did.
you have a physical copy of it.
Yes, I wanted to read this one book in hand, as it were.
And what was this book, Alex?
Ah, yes, this is we. I wish we were talking about the Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi, but
Maybe that'll be season 3.
possibly. I'm still making my final selections. We read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang,
Yep.
and reading this like poplet, I'm starting to realize that
The warning signs were there.
probably since like when this book came out, what in like 2018, there's been a very similar theme and very similar writing style in a lot of these high fantasy sci-fi style books with like a young pissed off female protagonist and just really bad writing.
Yeah, it's been longer than 2018, but yeah, there's definitely been a trend going in that direction, and I know both of us have tried to get published, very unsuccessfully, but the publishing companies are getting exactly what they asked for. When they're these agents are saying what these publishing agencies are looking for, so go figure.
Yeah, and I guess it's working out for them. The books are selling well and they're getting high reviews. This book is very well reviewed, across all magazines. It's highly rated on Goodreads, Amazon, wherever you can rate books. It's
What would really disturb me
beloved.
is if this book, how we talk about some of these books that we found that were older books that were popular in the day, but they've completely disappeared, but we've read them, we're like, these are amazing books.
Yeah, like Face in the Frost.
Yeah, or the Greatest Thing Since Sliced Bread.
Yeah, that one was great.
This, I hope, does not go the other way where, because it was so popular when it first came out, it just sticks in the lexicon of, oh, this is one of the greatest fantasy novels of all time. And
I think my biggest disappointment was the potential of this book because it's a war book.
It does have potential. I
Yeah,
will give it
it's
that.
got great ideas and it's got this rich, like, it's a fantasy book that's based on real history, and it's like all these great ideas and great concepts and great themes that R.F. Kuang plays with, and it's very maturely done. And I don't know, I just was wildly underwhelmed. I don't know if it was overhyped or what, but I think even if I had just like picked it off the shelf and read it, I would have been like, okay, well, that was a book, put it away and read something different.
If you had read it when you were 18, 19 years old, would your opinion have been different?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I think there's enough sex and violence in the book to kind of keep me going, but it's
You don't think it would have been memorable still, though?
I don't think so. I think I would have been like, oh yeah, I read that one. I remember liking it. It's like one of those kind of books.
Yeah. So I know we're jumping ahead of here, but I kind of compared it to, you remember those Feist books that our other brother had me reading for a while?
Like Shadow of a Demon King.
Yeah, it kind of I put it on that level of fantasy where there's potential there, but the author just doesn't know how to execute and actually write certain kinds of scenes. So
yeah, I can see that. Like those books weren't bad, but they definitely got lost in the mire somewhere along the line.
well, like for me, the worst thing about those books was the battle scenes because clearly the author had no clue how a medieval battle actually works or how to write one. In this book, the author clearly has no idea how she wants her battles to be, whether they are medieval battles or modern battles, or how to write either, because she tries doing both, often at the same time.
Yeah, I think like it's a medieval fantasy China setting, but she's basing it off of World War II era wartime, so it's kind of this weird intermixed feelings of what's going on here.
I'll save my comment for later. I was about to throw in a random comment, but I'll save it for later. I have a whole rant.
Okay.
I have a few rants, but that's a good one. So remind me.
All right. But yeah, this is R.F. Kuang's debut novel. She's I don't know much about her. Like I did a little bit of like I Wikipedia'd her. She's like this child prodigy, very gifted person. Like she was teaching university at age 19, took a gap year and wrote this book. This is her first book ever, and it like just upon writing it garnered huge amounts of interest from publishing companies. It established this bidding war, and it came out as a bestseller and immediately launched her into literary stardom.
I was reading some comments on Goodreads. Apparently, the Chinese audience is like, yep, another typical Chinese American that doesn't understand any actual Chinese history.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So they know the surface details, but that is it. So I thought that was
great.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, I should have read more reviews because I don't know. I like finding the reviews that match my reviews and like bringing them in. I didn't do that for this one. I was just kind of like, after 500 pages of meh, I was like, I'm not doing any more with this.
So why don't you read the back of the cover there?
Peasant, student, soldier, goddess. When war orphan Rin aced the Keiju, the empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies, she surprised everyone. Test officials, the guardians who wanted to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise, and even herself. But being a dark-skinned peasant girl from the south is not easy at the Synagogue, the most elite military school in Nikan. Targeted by rival classmates for her color, poverty, and gender, Rin discovers that God's long-thought dead are very much alive, and that she possesses a lethal, unearthly power, an aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism that could be the weapon the Empire desperately needs. While Nikkara is at peace, its enemy and former occupiers, the Federation of Mujin, bides its time, and a third Poppy War is just a spark away. Rin's shamanic powers may be the only way to save her people, yet she discovers more about the god that has chosen her, the vengeful phoenix, She fears that winning the war may cost her humanity, and it may already be too late. So if you couldn't tell from the back of this book, there's a lot going on in this book.
Yeah, there is a lot.
I was
And that doesn't even cover everything she tries to cover.
Yeah, I was kind of equating this book to Full Metal Jacket when I read it. Not on like terms of quality, but like you got two very clear parts, and one is way better than the other. Because like Full Metal Jacket's well known for its boot camp scene, but there's a whole second half to that movie that nobody likes. And this one, the boot camp scene is unbearable to read, and it gets way better in the second half. Still not
I
great.
wouldn't go that far. It doesn't get way better. I mean, there's improvements, but it was still a bear.
Yeah, definitely. The second half is way easier to read than the first half. First half is like
did read quicker.
racist. Meh.
Yeah, so this book starts off with about between 20 and 40 pages of backstory, info dump.
Yep, we learn all about Rin. She's 14 at the start of the book,
Unknown,
roughly
but
early
no,
teens.
mid-teens, because I thought they said that it was 16. Oh no, was it 14 or 16 when she goes into the school?
Pretty sure it's 14.
Okay.
But yeah, she's basically an orphan girl. She's living with
Drug dealers.
yeah, drug dealer, crime boss. She helps smuggle opium, and they want to marry her off for money.
And so that they're setting this book up as there's two Poppy Wars already, which I'm like, with your title of your book is The Poppy War. So what, so are we going to like the third Poppy War? And of course I'm thinking, okay, that she's lining up with the Chinese Opium Wars, which there were two of them, against England, and that was over trade breakdowns, and England just saying, we want your stuff, and China saying, well, we don't want anything from you, and England saying, okay, well, we're going to get all your people addicted to drugs, and so then we can just steal your resources. And
That was a wildly successful plan.
it was. But it said, then that connection just kind of dropped. And again, I'm thinking, like, okay, why are we calling this book The Poppy War, other than, so they set up this huge thing where she's working for these drug dealer warlords in this small village, and she's like, she sees all these people addicted to this really bad drug and says, I will never touch drugs in my life. She gets to school and she immediately starts doing drugs. And
Yeah, she it's a very long like first chapter of just she's got to study for the Nikan because she wants to try it and try and get out of this terrible situation she's in, and she's got to like blackmail her quote unquote like foster parents to try and get them to let her go do that. And lo and behold, this test, she gets a perfect score on it, which is unheard of for someone living in her region.
And the way she studies is everything that you're never supposed to do to study, which is basically refusing to sleep or eat and just sitting there grinding out, reading every single book you possibly can and memorizing it.
Yeah, she crams for like 6 months.
For something that's supposed to take like 10 years to train for.
Yeah, like it's to do what she did, it would take an average person like a lifetime dedication to doing it.
Yeah, so already you have that kind of already too perfect of a character that's, they're just so smart, even though she's causing herself pain and burning herself to stay awake and not sleep at all, but there's no consequences for these actions.
Yeah, she's legit like singeing her arm with candles to stay awake.
And nobody cares to notice because she's the poor orphan girl that's got darker skin. And that felt really forced too, was the whole racist thing, because
the racism angle was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, it kept, everyone's so racist. Yeah, but you still have friends that don't care, and a lot of your enemies that supposedly did care, they stopped caring because they got to know you, and so therefore it completely erased this whole racism thing, especially once they found out you're a Spearly.
Yeah, and it was so forced also when she gets to the synagogue, the military school. Like, it's just like you totally, you had all these characters that you just introduced, and they're essentially all just like, this is racist character one, racist character two. Like there's no, like, this is a problem that plagues the entire novel, is there's very little character development and really any of the characters aside from Rin and like Alton. Everyone else is just kind of a caricature of a character.
Yeah, and they're just throwing so many characters at you that you don't need to learn their names. You only hear from them once or twice. There was like the when she's getting the tour, I was very confused because their tour guide is talking to another student, but then all of a sudden it just I started confusing, the tour guide and this other student because she started fighting one of them, and it didn't make any sense. And then so the whole thing just felt garbled, and it's like, and again, we're talking about she's going to the most elite military academy in the country, where these are the smartest of the smartest people in the whole country, all 12 provinces, and these are all sons of chieftains and warlords and daughters of ministers of finance and whatever. And they're the smartest, most athletic people you would ever imagine seeing, and they learn nothing. And they got the worst teachers for teaching, like that Jun. He doesn't actually teach them to fight in a war. He's just teaching them just standard martial arts. And it's like, you are literally training them to become officers in your military.
Yeah, like when they do the battle, like the combat training or competition at the end, like Rin's training for that was doing a bunch of drugs with Jiang, and she beat the shit out of all of them. It was like,
yeah, the building up to it it was, like I said, just long and kind of pointless.
yeah, the only characters of any really import that you learn about are, besides Rin, are Alton, Nisa, and Kitte. And Kitte is not really that important either. I'm assuming he probably comes in towards like the sequel.
He comes in later books, I think. But so you have Altan, Kitte, and who's
Neza.
And you immediately start worrying, okay, we're gonna have some sort of love triangle or lovers to haters or something to bring in that romance aspect that a lot of readers are dying for now, for romanticy. Yeah,
there's a little bit of it, but thank God she doesn't actually like go down that road.
Yes. That rude road.
That root road.
I was thankful for it too, but at the same time, every time it felt like it was going to go that way, the way she avoided it felt amateur.
Yeah, because like, I don't know, she wanted to establish that Rin is very thirsty for Alton, but it's because like Alton's got that like dark mysteriousness to him, and he's like angry, and he's a really good fighter, and he doesn't really communicate with anybody.
Rin, she's not a good person.
Oh no, she's terrible.
Because all she cares about is more power, so she can be more powerful than anybody else.
Yeah, and
she wants power for power's sake.
Yeah, that's a theme in the book too. It's just power and abuse of power, and it's kind of like that phrase like power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So like the stronger the characters become, often they become evil and like much worse than you would have expected. And that's like why her master Jiang is big into like, do not use your, like, I'm going to train you how to use your powers, but never use your powers.
See, I thought with Jiang we were going to go in a completely different direction, and she just completely ruined him by the end of the book, where she made him to a total kind of a bitch.
Oh my god, yeah, it was a very Game of Thrones move. Yeah. Just like build this character up and have him like be like, oh, he's really cool, and he's like this, like she kind of rips off a few different books and stories throughout this book, so I'm going to compare him to Mr. Miyagi, where he's like, yeah, he's this troubled older guy, but he sees something in Rin and he wants to build her up, and he's like, I'm going to teach you these things, but this is very dangerous, and he's like this voice of conscience and at the start of the book, and then he disappears, and then when he comes back at the end, yeah, he's completely just broken and shitty.
And this is where I thought there was a big missed opportunity. So in this book, there's a whole pantheon of gods. They don't really get into it other than her god and a couple other what they make sound like minor gods. But she has the god of the phoenix, who is a obviously a fire god, and into burning, and the Spearleys love their fire, and we have this whole thing of how they somehow lost to this not China country, and then became an enslaved people. Then this not Japanese country goes there and wipes them all out, and forcing a not American Navy to come in and stop the massacres. Quick. That was the quick backstory there. And if you ask Rin or Alton there, that our God is the most powerful God because he's just God of destruction. Da, da, da. But Jiang is like, you don't have, the way I took it was he was trying to say, you don't have to worship one God. You could have all 48 working for you. And you can do it in a way where instead of becoming puppet of one of these gods and go mad, you can actually negotiate with all 48. And yeah, sometimes you have to give up a lot. Sometimes you could gain a lot, making these deals. But you can actually work with these gods and not just be tied to one. And basically saying, you want power, I'm going to give you power because you're going to have 48 gods or 8 gods or whatever, the 8 main gods or whatever it is, backing you instead of just one, where all these other shamans only have one god that they follow. And we find out Jiang, they try to, the author tries to hide it as long as possible. It's pretty obvious. He's one of the main heroes from the previous wars. He's the gatekeeper. And he's, again, the whole story builds him up to be like, he's the only, out of these 3 shaman warriors, he's the only one that didn't get completely taken over by one of these gods. He was the smartest, wisest of the 3, and he also didn't take the power and become emperor or empress, therefore avoiding being corrupted by absolute power. It's like, okay, great, this is a good story arc to kind of go. And then Kuang just kind of stamps and tramples and squanders that whole story arc.
Yeah, she like Jang makes all these great points from his being an older guy, years of knowledge and experience, and tries to pass it on to Rin, and Rin just kind of full out rejects almost everything he says and does to prove his point.
And it's done in that YA form where it's just repeated over and over and over again and mulled over from every direction in her head, and no action is taken until every last iota of possibilities been stamped out and thought of, and you're just like, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it's like, just fucking hit the dude. I don't know.
Again, also, she's supposed to be being trained to be this badass warrior, and every time she gets in a battle, more than just a fist fight with one of her classmates, she's petrified and freezes up.
Yeah, it's I don't know, the whole military school, like the entire part 1 is just a big mess. It's just so sloppy, and like it drags and drags and drags, and then there's this, the competition at the end is pretty cool, but at the same time, like, because Rin trained with Jiang and everyone else trained with June, their stuff is predictable, but since she did a more unique style of martial arts, they're not able to take her down, even though they're bigger and stronger and faster. Like, it's just none of it really makes sense.
Another thing that this novel had, it was meandering. So I was kind of thinking, because Becky always likes to bash Lord of the Rings because she always says 100 pages of the Lord of the Rings is a party for Bilbo Baggins. Who gives a crap? Let's get to the story. And this book was, for the first part, was okay, you're going to a military school, you have that YA, let's go to a magic school or a military school or whatever school, so we can basically just dump all this information on you, give a really cheap background on this character and why they are doing what they're doing. But it never even really gains a point after that, other than, oh, we're at war now and therefore I must fight this war. What are her motivations? Like Lord of the Rings, you're fighting this war because your land is going to be enslaved, and the way to win this war is destroy this one ring. Here's your, join this fellowship and we will get you to where you can destroy the ring and the war will be over. Okay, great.
And Rin's only real motivation to like be that active in the war is like they see the Empress at one point, kind of being
And
escorted
she's
by.
enthralled by her power.
Yes, and she says, "I will die for this person," and that's really all we get for motivation.
Yeah, and it said that there's just a meandering novel. There's just there's no end point in this, which I get that's like a storytelling thing that they do. You got to have some sort of thread here, though.
Yeah, I also wanted to real quick just point out, like I mentioned, she rips off some other stories. I had two like that I just really caught on to like immediately. I'm sure there's more also, but like Jiang, like one of his first interactions with Rin is he sees her teaching herself martial arts from a book, and he's like kind of like snide about it. And if you've ever seen the movie The Karate Kid, it's almost verbatim that scene of when Mr. Miyagi first sees oh gosh, what's his name? Johnny? No, not Johnny. Danny. Danny.
There you go.
No, Johnny's the other guy. I still making my way through Cobra Kai, and also one of his training things to do to get Rin to become big and strong is he gives her a pig and tells her to carry it up a mountain every day for water, which is I don't know if you ever read the book Holes or seen the movie Holes, but that's literally how like one of the flashback characters becomes big and strong as he carries a pig up a hill over and over again. There's a little more brutal of an ending because the ending she gives the pig back to the owner and the owner takes it to the slaughterhouse. So there's a bit of a twist there, but it's it's like
We
okay, you
always knew
are
that pig was going to die in the slaughterhouse. That was the whole point of bringing the pig up there, was to make it big for slaughter.
yeah. It's like all right, we're gonna I guess we can call it motivation or inspiration. But it's definitely like you didn't really come up with your own ideas. You were watching TV one day and you're like, I'm gonna use that.
And basically, a lot of the characters are written as really stupid. Like Jun, you find out as you learn a little bit of his backstory, was a commander in the last Poppy War for one of the major tribes. Yet his military tactics are basically sit there and do nothing because we might piss off the enemy. You were one of the leading guys for fighting the last war and leading troops. Well, that was the other thing we talked about earlier, Alex. This book wants to be has 14th century weapons with 21st century medical knowledge, and that really annoyed me. Like we were talking about how Rin suddenly starts getting her periods at age 14, 15 years old. No clue that this was going to happen, even though she lived on the streets of a poor village where she should have ran into somewhere. She worked for a pharmaceutical. Her adopted parents were, as their cover job was running a pharmacy. So that, again, it's something that's like, you should have been able to connect some dots here. Even if they are pieces of crap that were raising you, you're supposedly super smart. You've got a perfect score on this test that's impossible to get a perfect score on. And so she goes to the facility doctor at this college, and they say, oh, we have this thing that will do X, Y, and Z. Just drink this one potion, and in 3 days, your whole uterus, and going into like pretty good detail about the inner workings of a woman's body that medieval times, which is this book is kind of wanting to be, they would have had no clue. No clue. Let alone had a potion that just did this without actual like magic, but it's science, but it's just a magic potion.
Yeah, the and also just like the implications of just being like, take this potion and absolutely destroy your uterus.
Yeah, and of course I'm thinking, okay, so you have this girl that's already undersized, with our knowledge now of saying, hey, supposedly these guys' knowledge, hey, you're not gonna have kids, but you're not gonna have periods. You're not gonna have hormones to actually develop into a full woman. Well, we know what happens when, say, you snip off the balls of young boys and they become eunuchs. they don't develop, like into normal men. They get soft and kind of pudgy. Their voices never drop. There's a lot of other consequences to completely neutering somebody. And this is she's just like, yeah, she'll just be a normal teenage girl now, and just without
Yeah, it was
any
like
without any negative side effects to this.
he's like, yeah, you're sick for 3 days, and then oh, it's fine.
We never have to worry about a period again in your life. Congratulations. Again, this book had no consequences for any actions that this girl took.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And like even when she's like starts trying to like touch into her shamanistic powers, and she starts taking the poppy, and like just it's like she never really has to wrestle with addiction or anything like that with taking the drugs. She just sort of like has it control the entire time.
So, this is what I do now.
Yeah, like other characters struggle with addiction, like Alton does, and like they talk at length about other people with her powers. Like it's almost inevitable that they are going to fall into the throes of addiction because they need poppy or opium to access their communication with their god. And she, like, we don't see that with her. Well, at least not yet. I don't know if it comes into the sequels or anything like that, but she does a lot of drugs in this book, and nothing really comes of it.
Yeah, it's like Altan. She's talking about how in her village she sees what people that are taking a lot of this opium, what it does to them, and Altan's doing heroin, morphine, opium, and just straight poppy seeds, just willy nilly. Yet he's this physically fit as the most trained warrior as you could ever expect to be. It's like, this guy is so hopped up on drugs, he shouldn't be able to stand up straight. Richard Pryor has a really good skit on how, on heroin addicts, where they're basically walking at a 90-degree angle. From like leaning so far back, they're basically parallel with the ground because their balance is so good, but they can't stand up straight.
Yeah, Richard Pryor should know.
Yeah, and he would know, because he had a major problem, and he did not look like a physically fit person.
Yeah, bro set himself on fire. I mean, Bailey, we are still on part 1 of this book. Let's go into part 2, where we meet the very important character named Tyr, who's actually not that important. He gets killed right away, but his death is kind of important because it sets up Alton for a position he's not really ready for. So Tyr was supposed to be a commander. War breaks out between Nikan and the Mujan Empire, and everyone in the academy is now thrust into service, probably a little before they're fully ready. But
at the same time,
there's a big battle.
You see all this stuff. None of them actually know. Even the people that are commanders don't actually know how to command. They're just then a battle happens and these people do this. Okay, well we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're following Rin here, and she's cowering while she has a drug overdose because she took too much opium this time.
They're always saved by some sort of miracle or getting bailed out last minute. I notice that's a theme with all the battles.
Yeah.
It's like whether they're fighting a whole army and Rin all of a sudden like accidentally accesses her powers and torches the commander of the other army and drives them away with it. There's also like they're battling the Kaimei, which that I think they beat by like Alton kind of hits it from behind when it's about to kill Rin, or like there's always just some sort of thing that bails them out. Right at the end, they're not actually fighting a winning battle. It's always losing until the very end.
Okay, so next, the big gripe I said I had a rant on.
Go for it.
Kuang doesn't know what a fucking siege is.
That's very true. They do a lot of fighting for a siege.
Yeah, well, they're doing street-to-street fighting off and on, or just giving up whole random blocks in the city. And the whole time it's like, we're in the siege. But we're sending people out into the countryside to go get food, and the Mugan only have these certain docks down here. It's like, well, if they only have a tow, that's not a siege. They don't even have full control over the bay. You can go in and out of the city at free will. A siege is you've completely surrounded a city
and cut off its resources, and you're starving them out slowly.
Yeah. And these people are just doing whatever. And I said they're having occasional street to street battles, or they're just saying, and it's all the action is off page on these street to street battles of, oh yeah, uh, Mugen took this city block over here this time, but we took that city. We were able to hold that city block. Okay, how is this fighting actually happening? And most of the time, it's like the leaders of these militia groups, which the militia is apparently just, she doesn't know what a militia is because that's just what the armed services are in this country. But they're just like, yeah, we don't want to piss the Mugens off too much because they could overpower us and just run us over right now if they wanted to. So we're just going to sit here quietly while we wait for reinforcements, which still won't be enough to actually defend this city. It's like they have a toehold. You have 90% of the city. You put the siege on them in that, in the docks.
Yeah, you probably could just let them come into Coeur d'Alene and then cut them off there, but who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Rin, the fighting is kind of stupid when you word it like that. So Rin is like that first battle scene. Jang, he summons a bunch of monsters and then disappears. Rin torches, like she's about to get killed, and then she accesses her phoenix powers and torches a commander. And then the Empress, she meets the Empress, and the Empress determines her to be a CK, something like that, and assign or a special, like someone, one of those shamans with special powers, and assigns her to the CK squadron, which is like the special forces suicide squad death troop, and assigns them to the port city of Coeur d'Alene, where there's a siege, which you described so well as not a siege.
Someone please email Kuang and just be like, hey, please do a little reading on military tactics and terminology. And
she's clearly a history buff if she's basing it off of like wars that happen in her history.
And I'm not a super huge expert on that theater of World War II, but what I do know, I know probably more than the average person because I enjoy that kind of stuff, but it is, or I should say the average Westerner person.
Joe's a white guy in his 30s. He loves World War II.
Yeah, pretty much. But it is one of those deals where she clearly knows her history. She throws in all these little tidbits that nod to, oh yeah, this is from this thing here, like the Nanking Massacre, the Unit 5, I think it's Unit 513. That's the Japanese Unit 513. That was the torturers that did even more despicable things than even the Nazis did, which is hard to believe, but the Japanese were very good in World War II at creating horrible ways to die and just seeing what it was like on lots and lots of people. But it says you can see that she knows her history really, really well. She puts in all these tidbits. Oftentimes, she probably shouldn't have, because it doesn't work with the story or what the story that she's telling. It's just some aside that's like, okay, this was a pointless aside. We don't need this. You don't have to prove how smart you are by telling us these little facts or aligning these facts with actual world history.
Yeah, she could have, like, instead of doing all these, like, look how smart I am, she could have focused that attention on character development, because we meet all the members of the CK, and there's like, this one's big, this one's a woman, this one's small.
This one's made out of water.
Yeah. And
we literally have one that's made out of water.
Yeah, and we really don't learn to care about any of them.
No.
Try as she might. It's just sort of like, yeah, they're there, they're saying lines, and you're trying to have like little character, like little nuances to them, but it's not working. They're interchangeable.
And then basically the only one that we're learning anything about is Altan, and he's just a piece of shit.
Yeah, so
he's a horrible human being.
Yeah. Altan was he kind of got killed, so Altan had to take his place. So he's this, I'm assuming he's probably about 19, 20-ish, very young.
Yeah, because he actually finished his school, so the school was 6 years, and he graduated.
Yeah, so he's a young adult, new adult kind of feel to him, and he's trying to command an entire squadron, and he's getting a lot of pushback, and he's having to deal with a lot of personalities, and yeah, so he's a total asshole all the time.
And again, if you look at, and again, I don't know Chinese military history, even in World War II, super well, but knowing the American side of it, we're putting 20-year-olds in charge of that kind of stuff, and they're able to handle it just fine. It's not a necessarily a lack of age; it's just a lack of leadership skills, that they're just like, oh yeah, you're a good fighter, therefore we're going to stick you on the top as our leader because you can fight the best, and not actually you can plan and lead people and they will follow you. They follow you because you're the best, and she has no understanding about how good leadership actually works.
Yeah, it's very like almost like an animalistic mindset, like, oh, the biggest, baddest gorilla is leader of the gorilla group, and it's just sort of like, yeah, Alton's the best fighter, so he's the leader.
Yeah, he can fight the biggest guy even though he's not the biggest guy. And
whereas like the first mission they go on is a clear indication of why he shouldn't be in a leadership position, because he falls for an enemy's feint and he ends up getting a lot of people killed.
yes. And the whole thing that set up that feint, the mission that he did, was basically just let's take our little squad out and cause a bunch of mayhem because I don't want to deal with the other commanders right now because they're going to tell me no. And then we're just going to basically kill a bunch of people, start a fire, have no consequences, go back and pretend we're heroes.
Yeah.
And everything goes flawlessly other than Ren just taking too many drugs and having a bad trip.
Yeah, and all of a sudden Rin can't use her Phoenix powers anymore. She can't call upon the god to
because she has no clue how she actually gets to the god to begin with, because she never actually paid attention.
Yeah, she never listened to Jiang, and she's trying, like, Jiang never got to the point of teaching her how to do that. He was training her up to it, and then the war started, and then he disappeared like a good teacher does. And so she's trying to figure out how to do it on her own, and she can't do it. And she's getting pressure from all over to be able to do this because they need her to be able to cast fire in order to win battles. And she's just sort of hundreds of pages of, oh, I can't do it. I'm trying.
And again, they need these guys to cast fire, but they also have 14th century Chinese rockets and gunpowder, and they have one of their little teammates there who's the quirky 12-year-old that likes to blow things up, because that's just a character all these books had to have, with unlimited access to saltpeter. Apparently he can make dung bombs and all these he MacGyvers all these different things, and it's like, okay, so you have as much munitions as you possibly need. You have a archer that can apparently shoot as fast as any 30 other archers. Why are what are the point of the spearleys other than just human torches?
Yeah, and also, like, she's padding it out more by shoehorning in a subplot with Nisa, because like Nisa joins the CK, and
or he wants to join the CK.
He's like, well, yeah, he's part of a different battalion that's like camped with them, and he keeps trying, like, she starts giving him a redemptive arc.
Yeah, she starts doing the enemies to lovers
like
kind of thing.
He comes up to Rin and he's tapping his index fingers together. I'd be like, I'm sorry, Win. I'm sorry. I was so racist. That was so wrong of me. And there's like this whole like, should Rin talking about analyzing things from every single angle. Should Rin forgive him? Should she befriend him? And Alton's like, you should never forgive him.
And then we discover he's a shaman too, but they've been hiding it because it's looked down upon among the royalty. And
yeah, and then he dies, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, we think he dies because we thought he died at the school already.
Yeah, so we thought he died once, and then there's this huge battle that they have to retreat from, and he gets caught in some crossfire, and Alton forces Rin to leave with him, and rather than saving
they're using poison gas.
Yeah. And so he kind of, we see him about to die, but he kind of like dies off screen, so who knows?
Yeah, so he probably doesn't die because it's like a soap opera. These people never truly die. Yeah. Even when you see him die on screen, don't believe it because something happened. They survived.
Yeah, but yeah, they're in. They spend the bulk of part two in Coeur d'Alene,
Yeah.
trying to defend the port city from the Mugen
Yeah,
attack.
but they're all of a sudden rapidly losing the city, even though they've been doing all these amazing feats of glory off and on.
And then they
And
realize they didn't have to actually protect Coeur d'Alene at all.
yeah.
It was just
Well,
a
what happens is they all of a sudden say, hey, let's capture one of these random soldiers, see what he knows for information. And guess what? They start torturing him, and he just spills the beans because, oh, you're Spearless? Oh, I can't lie to you. You'll burn me to death. It's like, okay, well, what's the difference if they took a knife to your balls or something? I mean,
yeah.
if you're going to talk that easy, you're going to talk. And apparently, this low-level soldier knew about a whole other army that was skirting around the city to strike at the capital.
Yeah, so yeah, it was Coeur d'Alene was just a front to just draw forces away from the capital of Gaul and Nice, and so everyone they realize this is happening and that they're probably too late, and so they start heading up the river towards Gaul and Nice, and they start seeing this is actually pretty cool visuals like the rivers like getting steadily more filled with bodies and like blood flowing.
And this was the Rape of Nanking copy of where she just stole straight from. I think the book is called the Rape of Nanking. It's
Yeah, the Nanking Massacre.
the Nanking Massacre. But there's a author, a Chinese American author who actually has a really sad story because her parents survived that and made it to America eventually, and she had never knew what was going on, but she started, somehow found out, did some research, and she wrote this really heart-wrenching book about this as the best known thing, where in Japan still tries to deny this any of this is true, but basically they torture and kill a whole city of people, innocent people, they surrendered. And this woman ends up going crazy because she becomes so obsessed with this, and she ends up committing suicide because she became so depressed. So it's a really tragic story. And so Kuang just basically rips off the whole thing into this and squeezes it into 75 pages.
Yeah, and like I think it's a good part of the book because it kind of shows like the force that they're up against and what's really at stake here. So I thought the whole that section like yeah it's deeply rooted in Chinese history, but it's actually pretty well done for the most part. It gets a little bogged down in the they spend way too much time trying to dispose of all the bodies in the city.
And they find Kite again, so
Yeah,
they
Kite's there.
they can bring him back in, and that potential love interest. And
Yeah, Kite is he's just useless.
yeah.
Like he's sort of important in part one because he's Rin's only friend, the only person who tries to befriend her. But it's he doesn't really do much other than like I think they're probably gonna set him up to be like the voice of reason because like Rin's slowly losing hold of her humanity as she's witnessing trauma after trauma and like communing with gods and getting more deeply involved with drugs. I think Kide's if I had to make a prediction for future books, he's going to be the person that helps pull her out of it.
Yeah, so then Altan says we have to do a desperate measure and go to this prison in the middle of the country where all the other shamans that went crazy were locked up, and we have to free all of them so that we can just take over the world. Again, his whole reasoning of what he's going to do once he frees these people, how he's going to control them, is just, I can do that. I'll do this. I'll do it right. I can keep people from going crazy by their gods in my little squad one at a time, so I can just release thousands of these people and we can go. And then we start getting into this weird, all these people are actually immortal, they can't die, so it's every shaman that's ever gone too far in the history of the country. And it's like, so you're unlocking a bunch of immortals, and if
Yeah, and most of them like have locked themselves away so that because they've lost control of their powers.
yeah.
And like I get that Golan Nice is like the catalyst that kind of sets off that desperation, and it's a desperate time calling for a desperate measure.
But then you learn from the second in command there that was Alton's wanting and plan from the get go, even before the whole thing. He thought it was wrong that they were locking them away. He just wanted her freedom. He said, I can help them gain control because I got perfect control over my powers, which he clearly doesn't because
Yeah, we find
because
out.
he's so doped up all the time.
Yeah, we find out that he's been hitting the opium pretty hard. He's a high functioning addict, but it's getting worse. And then that's kind of like the first time Rin just like flat out does opium. Is like she's with him and he's getting high, and so she takes the pipe and takes a hit with him.
Yeah.
They also find out that they are part of the same village that got massacred, so they're actually the last of their kind.
Yeah, because she
in the
goes on
world.
one of those spirit trips.
Yeah.
And then so they go to this prison. They find Jiang.
Yeah.
He says, "Stop being stupid, stupid," and locks himself back up. They find the guy that Altan had locked up when he first joined that CK group, and he immediately escapes, totally mad, totally bonkers, and he becomes the winds. His god was a god of wind, and so he's blowing gales across the country now, just destroying whatever is in his path. And then they're immediately captured by the Mugans.
Yeah, the Mugans capture them, torture them, and they also reveal, because you always want to tell people your plans, because there's no chance they can escape, they tell them that the Empress is actually working with them to conquer her own lands.
Yeah. Basically, all of a sudden you discover this, and it was strongly hinted at that this was going to happen. So we all knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, because the Empress was present when Tyr got killed.
Yeah,
So
she was the one that killed him.
The audience knew,
Yeah.
but Rin and
But
Alton
for
didn't.
some reason,
Just terrible story writing.
For some reason, this Empress is trying to destroy her own country with the help of her worst enemies that she had defeated the last time they came to invade. And the whole reason why she became Empress and gained all her power. So extremely unclear why she would be doing any of this. So they escape this prison. Altan decides to sacrifice himself so that Rin can escape and go to Spearley, the island where they came from. And again, in this part, like the escape, I was like, ooh, this is going to be really cool. They're human torches. They're going to go out there and just do. So they completely burn down the laboratory that they're in. And then they step outside and they see the dead guards that had been kind of roasted alive on the outside the room because they had burned so hot. And they say, huh, look at that. There's a crossbow right there, an automatic crossbow. And I'm like, you are literally spewing flames out of you. What do you care about a crossbow? They have Rin pick it up, walk out, take like 5 shots from it before it runs out of ammo, and then go back to, okay, there's too many here. You have to go save yourself, and I'm gonna sacrifice myself. I was like, you were literally in your room burning the arrows that were being shot at you before they could hit you. You were burning so hot, so you were literally untouchable. You can charge into a group and just burn them alive on a 20-foot radius. It's like a game of Diablo when you're super, on God mode or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of saw this as like Titanic. This is like her James Cameron moment when there was totally room on the door. Like Jack could have survived. Like, Alton didn't have to sacrifice himself to save Rin there. I think he just kind of had a death wish, and this was a moment where he could buy her time for her and the CK squadron that came to save them, give them time to escape. But he ultimately probably didn't have to do that. It was just like Alton needs to die so that Rin can kind of lose that last bit of touch with humanity and become this bastion of revenge and anger, because she's, like I said, she is steadily losing her humanity throughout the book, and I think just losing Alton's like the final stone in the wall that she kind of puts up around herself.
Yeah, so Rin gets to the island of Spear and finds the altar for the Phoenix God, and has another trip with drugs to talk with the god. And she talks with the woman that had been blocking her, the spirit that had been blocking her was the Queen of Spear, the Queen of the Spears when the before they got wiped out, and why she had given up their power to Chinese forces. I forget what their actual country name was now. But Chinese supposed to be forces. And it was such a lame reason. It was like, I didn't want to have absolute power for power's sake. And it's like, but all they were asking for was to protect your island from a invading force and not become a slave to another country. That seems like a pretty good sacrifice to say, hey, I'm gonna do this. You need to kill me afterwards because I will have gone too far. But we need to, I'm gonna sacrifice myself to protect my people instead of just, I'm just gonna sacrifice myself and still have my people get enslaved. It's like, okay, made no sense. So then Rin goes to the Phoenix God, says, I'll do whatever it takes to take my revenge. I'll whatever it does. And basically then she destroys all of Mugen, the whole chain of islands, and every single living person on there. It's like a nod towards World War II dropping an atom bomb on one city. But
Yeah, it was
there's no remorse of like, well, there is remorse, but then there's no remorse. Then there is remorse, and there's no remorse. But it's like, yeah, we're just gonna kill every single person just because they're all evil.
Yeah, I was also like talking about like inspiration. I also got throughout the entire book and feeling of Ender's Game, like from like the like the humble beginnings to wiping out an entire civilization. It follows that storyline pretty closely. But the big consequence though that she faces at the end after destroying all of Mugen is Kite is now afraid of her.
Yeah, that is the consequence. If you're willing to kill them, who else are you willing to kill? And she's like, the Empress.
Yeah,
And
she
like,
swears revenge on the Empress, and the book ends there, ready for a sequel.
yeah, and I mean, she's lining up to be one of the great supervillains that a actual hero should go and take care of. I did not like this book. It bothered me. Alex?
Yeah, like I gave it 3 stars. I'm kind of regretting that rating. I'd probably bring it down another peg. Like Rin's a terrible character. Just you can't agree with really anything she does. I think that's part of the point, but it's also like, all's fair in love and war. But the decisions she makes don't are really hard to identify with. Like, would you do what Rin did if you were given her situation? Like, I don't feel like that's, like she can wrestle with those ideas and she can make mistakes, but she just gives in fully to the darkness, and that's kind of
Yeah,
what we're trying to avoid here.
and like the whole, like my saying, it's Kuang is equating like her destroying all of Mugen to dropping an atomic bomb, because basically it's a giant volcano goes up, it destroys them, and it's complete utter destruction. When we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, it was mulled over and thought over by the smartest people, some of the smartest people in the world, saying, why would we do this versus something else? Like, because, and the reason was to save Japanese lives. As weird as it sounds to us these days, if you read World War II history of that theater, we were having to go island to island fighting every man, woman, and child, killing every single one of them because the Japanese government had them so terrified that we were monsters, and that's all we wanted to do was just completely wipe out the Japanese people. That they were so brainwashed they were gonna fight down to the very last person. And to go into Japan, we were gonna have to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of American lives and Allied lives to literally commit genocide to end that war. Or we said we can show them that we have these new bombs that can literally wipe them out without us even having to set foot on their ground, and maybe the leadership will say, never mind, we surrender, we'll figure out a way to make peace. And as terrible as it was, it saved more lives than killed. This was just, I want revenge. They destroyed my people. The people you don't even like, because they're a bunch of racist pricks that enslaved your people that you just learned about. For a ruler, an empress that has betrayed your people. What is your revenge against? Killing a couple of your friends that you hated in school? They killed your kind of sort of not really junky lover?
Yeah, they kind of set it up with like she's deeply personalized, but yeah, is it personalized or is it like nationalism? Because like the big trigger is wiping out the capital city, which are people that you're not really attached to on an emotional basis. Like if you're wiping out an entire nation and swearing revenge on the empress because your boyfriend got killed, like that seems really small potatoes. Like it's a weird kind of dichotomy of like what are her actual motivations for declaring revenge, because the only person that you really liked throughout the entirety of this book is still alive with Kite.
Kite is the only, again, it's two-dimensional character, but the only character that actually has a moral or any sensibilities in this that you can tell. Everyone else either dies or are morons or drug addicts or just bad people.
Yeah, and like maybe like out of like a morbid curiosity, I might check out the second book if I don't have to pay for it. But I don't know. It's just like I think this book was too ambitious, and she ended up biting off more than she could chew with it. And I think like even the good parts suffered because of it.
Yeah, as you said, this book had amazing potential. Like you look into this and it's like, okay, I can see what you wanted to do, but the whole execution of it was just not there. I mean, she could have done a whole book series just on going to the military academy. She could have done a whole book series of with flashbacks to the military academy of the supposed siege of the port city or of the massacred city or some smaller narrowed down aspect. Another problem that Kuang had, she did a lot of telling and no showing. It was
Yeah, this was definitely written for. I think it's what's that emerging genre of new adult. It's not quite young adult. It's not adult, but like new, like the 17 to 21 age group. I think was the target audience for this. So it's definitely written down because there's books that cover a lot of like philosophical debates. I can't talk at all today. Philosophical debates with the brutality of war. Like I recently read Starship Troopers, and the book is not even half the length of this one. It covers literally everything talked about in this book and is much more concise and is an incredible read. It's a great book. But this one is I don't know, it's meandering and long and very weak.
While I was reading this book, I also read another book called Marines, Crimson Worlds, and it's just a pure trash space marine science fiction war book, and it's about 200 pages, 230 pages long, and it's just action scene followed by action scene followed by action scene. And that book had a problem of a lot of telling and not showing, and just you going from one area to that next to the next, and not really going into any great detail with other characters because they were coming in and dying or going out so fast that all you really cared about was like two characters. But because of its brevity and its lack of introspection, it actually came off as a much better book. So even though it's a one of those garbage reads that most 20 or 30 something year old or even teenage boys are gonna eat up and read because it's a pointless action. That's all it is. It's there's some, but they had the consequences. The Marine made had real penalties when he screwed up or when he succeeded. That there were actual building relationships. There was actually the couple other characters that actually get focused on and have actual story arcs and are built on and are more than two-dimensional. So in basically this author did in 230 pages, Kuang couldn't do in 530 pages, and we got two more books to go in the series if you want to continue it. And it's just like, why? We're not the audience, Alex. We're not the audience.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pop lit. I think I've read enough where I've seen it done better. Like I said, like I made references to a lot of other stories, some that are directly referenced and some where like the plot kind of follows closely what other people are doing, and like all of those are done better. Like Karate Kid's done better. Holes is done better. Uh, Ender's Game is done much better. It's all been done before, and it's all been done better.
Yeah. So I got some questions for you, unless if you have some other final thoughts.
No, I'm gonna I wish Goodreads did half stars, but 2.5 stars.
I gave it 2 stars, but it was probably closer to 1.5 stars. But it wasn't like I. It's been close enough of reading Some Desperate Glory that I could not put it at that level. It was definitely way better than Some Desperate Glory.
It was a similar writing style, which also like was it Court of Thorns and Roses, which I think my thing with Becky
Yeah,
should be up by now. Um, like that one's just writing style is very prevalent. Even I was talking about how good The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi was, but it's also like just that very linear storytelling with a lot of exposition. And the Amina al-Sarafi book does that well, but it's never going to be. I think just writing this poplet style is never going to bump it up to, instant classic for me.
So, what is your base knowledge of Chinese history, and did you make any of the connections with Kuang's world?
And unfortunately, I'm not a huge history buff. Like I know certain things about this and that. However, I'm far from being an expert on Chinese history. Like that's a lot of history to cover. So I kind of just took what she knew at face value, and didn't question it.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, my knowledge is fairly basic, also, but I know like the medieval era that this was supposed to be set in originally with the 12 provinces. China had many times when the empire would break up into either 7 or 12 provinces, and it would be its weakened states because all the provinces were fighting each other. And so I got that sense of what she was trying to do there for medieval China. You had then the opium wars stuff she was putting in, and then the the Japanese atrocities put in there. And I said, very basic knowledge on my side, but it came out as a mess because you're again doing too much. You're putting in multiple eras of a history of China that stretches literally thousands of years, and trying to distill it down into 540 pages, and focus in on some of the aspects you choose just randomly. It didn't work in this case.
I mean, you can say what you want about like Game of Thrones, but like those books are all 1,000 pages, and
And
there's
they focus
seven of
on
them instead of 500 pages and three. So you
and
can take your time. You can have a large cast.
and you can and they focused on medieval European, specifically English history, where with what they were kind of what George R. R. Martin was kind of basing his story off of a very specific. I forget which was it, 100 Year War, War of the Roses. You remember which war it
I
is?
don't remember. I've
Okay.
never actually read Game of Thrones.
Okay, there's a specific war he is focusing, he's basing his story off of, and then of course it branches off from there as he delves deeper and deeper into his world, where he just has written himself down into a death spiral. But that's what he said it was some English Civil War that he based off his whole story off of in one very specific time period. He said Kuang is trying to hit 3 or 5 different time periods all at the same time, and it just comes out messy. What track would you pledge as a student to Singard, and why?
Well, I mean, Rin is the audience surrogate. You're supposed to see yourself as Rin and pledge to the, what was it, the psyche,
The lore.
the lore. Pledge yourself to lore, because like lore, you get to do drugs and talk to gods. Why would I want to just like do combat or like study shit?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, either the medicine or the strategy, because those are the only things that are actually any worth of that school. The lore, which nobody knows what actually is, because it's only one student ever has studied it, which is Rin, because she's the only one that was smart enough. Because Altan was too angry,
Yeah, he was too hungry for power, so Jan kicked him out.
even though Rin was just as hungry, if not more so.
She definitely winds up being at the end. She sides with Alton like every time.
What is your relationship in this book, or what is your take on the relationships in this book? How did they add, subtract from the overall story?
I mean, the characters just kind of come and go. There's like some brutality with it, like Nisa like having to get left behind to die. like I said, like the characters are just words on a page. There's not like there's a ton of characters. It's just you don't really get attached to them. And like there's attempts to make them relatable or fun or stand out like amongst each other, but it's just I don't know, you get a whole new cast of characters in part 2 and then they're gone by act 3, so there's really no point in getting to know any of them. Like the relationship dynamics is probably the book's weakest aspect. It was something that bugged me from page 1. Like, why should I care about any of these people?
Who would you say has the most control in the book? How does control and power play together in this novel?
I mean, I think we hit on that earlier when we talked about like the quest for power and how it corrupts people and turns them evil. I'd say no one actually has any control. Like they want to feel in control in places where they can, and that's why like Alton is, he's in a leadership position and he's got control over his powers, but he's also a drug addict and he's insanely angry and he's in pain all the time. Rin is, I think she starts in control, but the more power she gets, the less control she has. And you can look at Jiang, and like he loses control even once, and he locks himself away. So honestly, he probably has the most control
because
because he
yeah,
has.
Jiang was my kind of my saying he has the most control. And I thought when basically when he supposedly loses control, I took that as it was a controlled letting go of control. Like when it originally happened, he says, "Hey, the city has fallen. We have lost. I have to give what few people time to retreat, so therefore I'm going to open up myself to the gods and the powers and do like what I thought they were going to go the route that they might go, where say, hey, I need to ask these three gods for favors and then destroy this half the city gets destroyed because of the gods." And it just is like, nope, he lost control and got scared and ran to his prison cell.
Yeah, he almost like it was like a knowledgeable like, yeah, I'm giving up control for this brief moment, and I know I'm gonna have to pay penance for it. And he locked himself away.
But again, they made him kind of into that bitch where I can't be trusted. Like, oh, it's like you are literally the gatekeeper. Your whole point was to being able to do what you did and unleash the powers and not lose control because you didn't give yourself away to just one god to take control over you. But again, that didn't seem to matter in the story.
What are your thoughts on how Kuang writes about racism and colorism in this story?
We kind of touched on that a little bit where she just did a really hack job of it.
Yeah, it's just kind of shoehorned in, and it's just like taking away from other characters by making them xenophobic, and that's really all there is to it.
Yeah, there was never really any point to it because, oh, you're so dark, but you're not as dark as a Spearly. But then we found out you're a Spearly, so now you're okay. It's like, well, how do any of these people know what Spearlys look like? Because they're all dead except for what they knew of Altan. But I don't know. And again, the whole racism thing, I took it more as it sounded more like classism at times because she's with literally the most powerful families in their country, and she's a peasant, a adopted peasant at that. So yeah, color of her skin's a little different, but you're poor. And
Yeah, that's
like,
the bigger difference.
yeah,
Is that
and
she's
like
poor.
she goes to Kitay's house, and it's literally the size of her village, and he has personal butlers saying, "What do you want for dinner, master?" and him acting like that's normal, and she like, "Oh, this is what it's like to live on the other side." Okay, but that never gets explored. That no, you're poor. You're a commoner, and you're hanging out with really wealthy people, and you worked, the people you worked with worked in the fields. So yeah, you're a little darker skin because you're outside all the time. Yeah, no, it just didn't make sense. And again, she had people that like even like the girls she roomed with, some they would hang out with her and talk with her. Yeah, one was a kind of a bitch, but they weren't like completely shunning her and hazing her and threatening to kill her if she didn't leave the school because she was the wrong color or the wrong wrong class or wrong anything. She's like, yeah, you're just that weird girl that's super smart. Okay, yeah, whatever. Stay away from the boys we're interested in.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you agree with Tirza's decision, or with Rin obtaining the power from the Phoenix, even at its high cost? What would you have done? And Tirza was the leader of the Spearleys that gave up when they got enslaved by the Chinese ones.
Chinese ones. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think obviously you're not supposed to fully agree with what Rin did. I think she didn't want to lose her country and even though she didn't really have a home there, like she didn't want to lose the place where she lived and she'd been trained to defend. So you can kind of see her point of view. You're not really supposed to fully agree with it because you're not supposed to be like, oh, let's wipe out an entire nation of people. So I don't think you're supposed to fully agree one way or the other with either one of them. I think it's just more like, oh, we're going to debate who did what parts right and kind of find within yourself what the right answer is.
I wrote on that. Not enough information is given because really we don't understand why Tirza actually refused to take the power to defend her island. Just that she refused it, and then every time she tries to explain herself, Altan, who's the other shaman, that the spirit guide there, the second in command guy there, Rin or the Phoenix all tell her to stop talking and basically drive her away. So we never actually learn why she said, yeah, I'll let my people become enslaved versus destroying a whole nation through smoke and fire. So it says basically two extremes, and so we know Rin's reason, just petty revenge. Not really her motivation, but just her reason. I must have power for power's sake, but so we don't understand tears as other than it's just, well, if you don't take full power, then you die and your people become enslaved.
Yeah, I think if I don't know if I read the whole trilogy, maybe I'd come up with an answer, and after seeing how it plays out. But I'm with what we have now, I'm I kind of reject that question. It's not.
It's not
Yeah,
enough information.
yeah. It's not enough there.
Okay, final thought-provoking question. As the fantasy genre has evolved and changed over the last century, what are some of the things you see as good changes, and what are some of the things that are hurting the genre? Where does this book fall in all of that?
Um, Honestly, I've read a lot of books lately that have all been uh, medieval fantasy setting with like the female protagonist who has a lot of masculine qualities of like physical strength and quick to anger and it's just I think I need to take a break from it. It's kind of all running together like between this and Akotar and Some Desperate Glory. It's been a lot of just the kind of same storyline over and over again, same messages, same themes, and I think that fantasy is such a wide range of storytelling. Like anything's possible. So to see it kind of like these populate style books kind of all getting pigeonholed into like one message and one storytelling style, it's kind of frustrating almost.
Yeah, it is definitely frustrating. I know I've been having more and more, or less and less desire to read anything that's coming out in the last, said, 10, 20 years, and been looking at the back catalog of stuff that I've skipped. And I've also been looking more into figuring out how to find good independent authors that, finding ways to kind of find ways that are going to, so you're not just grabbing a random one that had no editing, no professional looking at it and saying, hey, you need to fix X, Y, and Z, and actually having grammar done correctly and all that stuff. Something that a traditional publisher you typically has a better track record of than independent authors. But the independent author game is also changed radically in the last 5 years, and thanks to companies like Amazon and others that have made it ever so easier for them to publish and make it cheaper to find editors and all that stuff. There's a lot of good stuff that's newer, that's not going to find at the bookstore necessarily.
Oh yeah, like I mean, if you wanted to read a really good piece of fantasy, I would recommend Paul Plimpton versus Ragnarok by Alex Kendall.
No editors at all in that one, unless if you count me as an editor, which I don't.
Yeah, to do my own grammar editing. Probably still missing stuff. I've gone over that like so many times.
Yeah, I think that just these modern fantasies, science fictions, they're just like I said, they're all the same story arc. I don't blame the authors. I think because there are authors out there that are good, they're just not getting the notice from the traditional publishers.
It's just like if you don't write this style of book, then it's not going to hit. So I understand from a financial aspect and a business point, but it's kind of denying like truly creative people and authors that know how to tell a complete story.
I guess as a short-term profit gain, they say, hey, we can pump out these 30 stories in the next 10 years. They're all basically the same story, but we know that one hit, so they're all gonna most of them are gonna probably hit, versus finding truly unique stories, and out of those 30 stories, maybe 10 hit and find their audiences.
It's good that there's thousands and thousands of new books come out. So it's even if the Poppy War or this the list of books that I keep coming back to that I've read recently, even if that's not your thing, there's other things to find. So I think it's also just there's good market saturation with if there's something you want to read. It's also a double-edged sword though, because you also have to sift through all the stuff you don't want to read, because there's like I work at a library. I keep saying like there's just thousands and thousands of books, and I probably want to read like a couple dozen of them.
Okay, well, that's the Poppy War. It was
more like the Poopy War.
Oh.
Womp 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 womp.
So please let us know what you think about this book if you've read it, because again, this is a popular book, so I'm sure some of you listeners have already read it if you didn't read it along with us, and see if you have different opinions, and tell us all about those different opinions or same opinions in the comments.
Yeah, sound off in the comments if you think we're being dumb.
Yeah, so next month is my pick, and I am going into a completely different genre, so get cozy.
Hey, why is your joke funny but mine's not?
Because it's not about poop, Alex. And we're going to do a total trash read. I admit that, but it's a guilty pleasure. But I picked a cozy mystery. I've recently... You listened to 372 Pages still, right, Alex?
Yes.
Have you listened to their cozy mystery?
Like the Quilters one?
The Quilters one?
I've not listened to it.
Oh, you're missing. That is a good series of episodes there. But apparently...
I've discovered with that podcast, it's way better when you read the book. So I've only been listening to the episodes where I've read the book.
Okay.
Digital Fortress, so worth a read to listen to that podcast.
No, I disagree with that. I read... No. Just no. Anyways, so apparently there's a major cozy verse out there, and this is one of the big traditional published ones, so it's going to be a little bit better quality than what the 372 page guys are reading. But as far as literature goes, this is just a garbage trash read that's just a guilty pleasure that you're going to enjoy. It's no Agatha Christie by any means. But what we're going to read is Death on Demand by Carolyn Hart.
Carolyn Hart.
Yeah, so definitely check it out. It's a lot shorter this month reading. It's only 200 pages instead of the 580 or whatever this book was, Alex.
Felt like 580. I think it was like 520, but it's rough though.
Yeah. So it'll be a quick read. It'll be an easy read. It'll be a fun read, and it'll be a quirky read.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a cozy mystery? Yeah. And we haven't done a cozy mystery. We've done some hard-edged mysteries, but having a cozy mystery, we can actually talk about what that is, and it's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah. So looking forward to that, Alex, next month.
Oh, yeah.
So remember, we post episodes on the 5th of every month. We also do bonus episodes on the 20th, as we said last month. Those will probably start becoming more and more like bonuses instead of just givens, because Alex is working 3 jobs. I went back to college. So our time is getting a lot busier. That said, we will do our best to get those bonus episodes out for you. I think we'll have one this month, hopefully.
Yes.
Alex is working diligently on that.
It should be done.
Should be done. Okay. So, as we said, we have an Instagram. You can DM us there, all your thoughts and feelings and whatnot.
Thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers. And we're on YouTube if you want to listen to us there. We on Spotify and Apple. Comment and rate, whatever, so that get us up on that algorithm. Word of mouth is the best way to get us out there too. So please tell all your friends, families, nemesis about our show and how much they will enjoy or hate it.
Especially your nemesis.
Yeah, I have a Medium, a Substack that I put book reviews on. I also put everything's free. I don't charge anything. So you can subscribe to those or just hop onto those, see what those are about. They're also all my reviews go on to Goodreads. So if you want to follow me there or Alex there, find our link tree on our Instagram page at Kendall Bookworms. Yeah.
I think you got it all.
I think I got it all in one breath.
Nice. All right. Well, let's get out of this thing here. We've got a long episode for such a long book. You're in luck. This is the longest book that I chose, so everything else should be a little faster. Actually, From Hell might actually be longer.
Yeah, but it's a graphic novel.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, actually, spoilers. We may or may not do.
That'll be after
this
coming book.
If you want to get ahead of time, start reading From Hell. But anyway, that was The Poppy War. Tune in next time for Death on Demand. Until next time, I'm Alex.
And I'm Joe.
And this has been Bookworms.
Out.